Hello everyone and welcome to Tom's Tomb of Horror. Hope you're doing good and well. So it's time for a new film review on the channel. I'm talking about the straight-to-streaming release called The Devil's Mouth. This was released back on the 29th of July. It was directed by Jeff Wadlow and it stars Kathryn Newton and Lana Condor. So this is kind of like a shark B-movie really, is how I would best describe it. But it's a very respectable one. You know, if you think of all the numerous shark films that there have been a number of misses. And I think that's partly because everyone tries and compares every shark film that comes out to Jaws, which is an all-time classic. And I think if you go in with expectations of something that comes even close to Jaws, you're nearly always going to be disappointed because that film is so iconic and it's such a classic. And actually, for what this was, I thought this was quite a respectable little shark film. I quite enjoyed it, and I will start with the positives for this review, and I will then, in the second half of the review, talk about what I thought were the negatives of this film. And this film definitely has its negatives, right? It's certainly, for me, is a bit of a mixed bag, which I actually felt, for me, I came away feeling a little bit more positive, though, than I did negative, which I was surprised about, having seen, you know, quite a negative reception for this one before I watched it on Amazon Prime. So this film's basically, it's about a group of friends that go to visit Thailand. Our main character here, Sarah, played by Kathryn Newton, is paying tribute to her father by visiting a specific cave system, and a cave in that cave system called the Devil's Mouth, hence the name of this film. And starting with the positives, and just to give a spoiler alert here, there will be spoilers in this review because I found it hard to kind of talk about the positives and negatives without going into certain character deaths, so do beware, there will be spoilers in this review. But starting with the positives here, I thought Kathryn Newton delivered a standout performance in her role as Sarah. I thought she embodied this slightly conflicted character very well, with a complex and toxic relationship with her bestie, Max, played by Lana Condor, and I thought their relationship was actually one of the more interesting points of the film. Yes, Lana Condor's Max is insufferably annoying and gets more and more annoying as the film goes on, and frustrating, but I thought that made for a good arc for Max's character to actually, for Sarah's character to actually develop. And I did enjoy Kathryn Newton's lead performance. I thought she held down the film actually at times, and, you know, perhaps, you know, made it better than it might otherwise have been in certain spots. So for me, that's certainly a standout, Kathryn Newton's performance. And I actually thought one of the best scenes in this film, funnily enough, came right at the start, the jellyfish scene. Can I just say, this was actually a really good little scene, really well done, and it left me wondering, had this film been a jellyfish-based horror film, would we have got something really quite special? Because this scene with Kathryn Newton being left adrift in the water with her friends partying on the boat in the background was actually really quite scary. I thought personally, with her thrashing around, getting stung by jellyfish, I thought that was quite well done and could have made for a better film in an alternate reality, maybe, had we had a jellyfish version of this film. I appreciate, though, it's about a loose bull shark in a cave system, that I thought that might have made for actually quite an interesting film, because it's quite, when you see the stings on her legs afterwards as well, it's kind of unnerving for me. But anyway, that's just my view on that scene. I thought that was a really well done scene, and you know, that got me interested in the film actually from the word go. I was like, actually, maybe I'm in for something here, which I might really enjoy. And I thought there was genuine tension in some of the scenes that, as I say, kept me involved with the film for most of its runtime. I'd say up to about the hour mark, I was interested in what was going on. I started to lose more interest as we got down to the last three characters standing, if you like. And by then I could predict what was pretty much going to happen. I mean, you could pretty much predict it from the start, but by that time I was finding everything was getting a little bit too predictable. But Adrian's death, let's talk about Adrian here, because I thought that her death was one of the better ones that the film, one of the better executed ones. And the reason I say that is because there was a good setup for it. You know, it had you on the edge of the seat with the kind of, them being, you know, her kind of hanging off, I think, the ledge. And then when the ledge collapsed, you know, it made for a real kind of panicky scene with the shark being let free. And actually, when the way the bull shark behaves, I think bull sharks, you know, the way they first of all bully their victims, and the way that it bullied Adrian in particular, I thought was quite unsettling. And she thrashed around. And yes, there wasn't much gore here. It was a fairly goreless affair, this film, but I sometimes think that kills can be more effective without too much gore. and what you don't see can make it scary. And I thought with Adrian's death, that worked. Not seeing everything that happened to her was kind of worked. Just seeing her being taken under the water in brutal fashion with her screaming, I actually thought worked for me. I thought that was quite good. Now, where this film worked less well was with a lot of the other character deaths, which just felt like they were trying to force a character background right before the character's demise. The best example for me being Greg, where, you know, he was suddenly afraid of blood. You know, just before his death, we suddenly learn he's afraid of blood and that he's, you know, not had a chance to call his mum. And we're supposed to feel a huge amount of sympathy for this character, but, you know, before we really know him very well, as with so many slasher films in horror, right, you don't know the characters. They're just effectively, they're just there to be killed. And I felt with Greg, that was pretty much the case. And a couple of other characters in this film as well weren't really developed much at all. So the film, you know, moving into the negatives, I guess now, right, it did suffer from some underwritten and frankly insufferable characters that could have been done a better job with. That's not to criticise the cast, because I actually thought the cast all did pretty well in their roles, but the way the characters were written was sometimes not so good. And it left you not feeling too emotionally invested. I suppose I only felt a slight emotional investment in Sarah's character, but even with Sarah, I didn't feel so emotionally invested. Perhaps that's because of the writing here. It wasn't quite as good as it could have been at times. Also, the CGI sequences, let's be honest, the shark CGI stuff wasn't particularly good, particularly in the moments where it was poking its head through the rocks to try and scare us. I mean, that really didn't work for me and looks very, very corny. Yeah, but the CGI was not the worst CGI I've ever seen, and most of the way through the film, it was just about okay enough that it didn't put me off too much. But at times, I will say, the times it was pretty bad, it did take me out of this film. Lastly, I feel like there are probably better versions of this film. Of course, there are better shark films, most notably the classics. And I would say watch Jaws, you know, watch Piranha if you want better versions of this one. Personally, I'm quite a big fan of Piranha. I know it's always in the shadow of Jaws, but I love Piranha from 1978. Go check that one out, actually. I think it's a pretty good, it's a good shark film, Piranha film, obviously, but a good creature feature underwater. I also think, you know, this is kind of trying to at times be like The Descent, but again, The Descent, like Jaws, The Descent for me is a classic now. I mean, it came out in the 2000s, but I regard that as a classic. You know, that's how you set up character dynamics and how you create claustrophobia and fear very effectively. And I feel like this film, you know, was trying to do that somewhat here, but not managing to. Again, because the writing and the backgrounds and the backstories were pretty absent. But yeah, overall, I'm going to emphasise I had a fun time with this. I'm going to finish with feeling pretty positive about the film as a whole. You know, if you go in with low expectations, you don't try and compare this to the best creature features that we've ever had, and you just kind of like let it roll, it actually keeps you involved for me anyway, and I felt on the edge of my seat, particularly for the first kind of 60 minutes or so, and I feel like for that reason, I'm giving this film a 6 out of 10. It's a mixed bag with lots of problems, but certainly with its strengths and its merits, and I think you'll be surprised if you go in with those low expectations. And that jellyfish scene, let me know in the comments if you thought that was actually really quite good, and probably perhaps the biggest high point of the whole film. I'd be interested to hear from you. Otherwise, until next time on The Tomb, until the next review or the next video, it is bye for now.